My latest release is Detective Aunty, which is the first book in the Kauser Khan Investigates series. It's out May 6th. It is also my book baby. I've always been a huge cozy mystery fan. I started reading cozies, specifically Agatha Christie, and of course Arthur Conan Doyle. I've read all the Sherlock Holmes books and most of the Agatha Christie's. I read them in high school. I read them in middle school. I even as a younger reader, I would read, Nancy Drew and all of the kind of YA mystery thriller type of books that were popular at the time. R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and those types of books, Encyclopedia Brown. And so Agatha Christie was like a natural jump for me. And then I was hooked. I would always have she was prolific. She wrote so many books. I always had like an Agatha Christie on the go. And it had a huge impact on me. In fact, some of my friends were surprised when I published a romance novel. They were like, "Oh, that's not the genre that they would have pictured for me." And what happened was I wrote Aisha at last, and my intent in my first book back in 2018, my intention was to write a cozy mystery next. That's what I wanted to do. And then my agent gave me some good advice. She said, "Your Aisha at last did well. Your first book did well. You need to write more romance novels in that genre." And that's why I wrote the rest of them, the other three. Hannah Khan came next. Hannah Khan carries on Much Ado About Nada and Three Holidays and a Wedding. And then finally I was like, that's it. I need to write my mystery novel. I really, really want to write this. And I had the idea as a result for Kauser Khan, who is the title character in Detective Aunty. She's the amateur sleuth. I had the idea for this way back in 2017. It was right after I'd finished Aisha at last, and I submitted it to my editor, and I was thinking about what to write next. And I just had this picture of like a Miss Marple type character, who solves mysteries in her very close-knit, immigrant community. And she was an older woman, just like Miss Marple. She was, my Khosrow Khan is perhaps not as old as Miss Marple. Khosrow Khan is in her late 50s, but because she married so young, and she moved from India to Canada as a young bride. She like finished having all of her kids by the time she was 24. And there was a really big age difference between her and her husband. Her husband passed away, and she's, basically a widow at the age of 57, 58. And so she has so much of her life left. And I was really inspired by some of the immigrant women that I know that have basically devoted all of their entire adult life to taking care of their family, to taking care of their kids. But they get married young. And so their kids are like in their 30s when they're in their 50s. And that's so young. Like you have so much more of your life left to live. And once you're kind of done your responsibility of raising your family, like what do you do next? What's your next act? And I was really interested in constructing this character who is like Miss Marple, but unlike Miss Marple, has married, has had children, has had, that family experience. That's really what brought me to it. Khosrow Khan lives in North Bay, which is a very small community about 4 hours north of Toronto. She used to live in Toronto with her husband and her children until tragedy struck, which is revealed quite early in the book. And she moved about 17, 18 years ago to North Bay with her husband, and her adult children continued to live in Toronto. And so her husband and her lived in North Bay. Her husband got sick about a year before the events of the book, and passed away. And so she's been a widow for about a year, still living in this small town, when suddenly she gets a unexpected phone call from her adult daughter, Sana. And Sana says, "You have to come back to the city. I've just been arrested for murder." And Khosrow Khan, even though she vowed she would never return to Toronto, has to go back to the city to help her daughter. And that's basically the page one. That's what happens in Khosrow Khan. And the rest of the book launches you directly into this mystery, directly into the heart of this community that I've introduced in my other books called the Golden Crescent Neighborhood. And it's really about how Kauser confronts the grief that she's been running away from, tries to fix the relationship that she has with her daughter, and identifies a killer. A mystery is like a big puzzle, right? Like you have to make sure that the puzzle fits. So like all the pieces have to fit together. And that was really hard for me. I mean, a romance is a different kind of puzzle because you have to make sure that, there's certain ingredients that happen. But with mystery readers are very smart and they have seen everything. They know what's coming. They're a suspicious bunch. So you have to be like try to be one step ahead of them. And I hope I did that. I think the I had a lot of fun constructing the actual crime itself and figuring out what happened because the reader like the writer has to know that before they know anything else. And then I had a lot of fun putting together all the misdirections, like all of my suspects, all of whom could have been the one who actually did the deed, but only one of them is the guilty party. So all of that was really fun. There's a lot of like working backwards with the mystery. Like you start off with the crime and then you're like, okay, but this is what went wrong and this is why, this person was suspected and that person was suspected and this person wasn't suspected. So I actually had to come up with I made like a Word doc chart of like, okay, this is the chapter. These are the people who were in this chapter. These are the red herrings. And I had to be very like diligent about following that chart. It's a lot of thinking through. It gives you a bit of a headache, to be honest. I'm really excited. I've already written the second book in the series.